Oscar Piastri was leading the Qatar Grand Prix until McLaren made a decision so bad, the FIA just exposed it. New evidence confirms the team ignored the one moment that could have guaranteed victory. Verstappen didn't steal the win, McLaren handed it to him, and the radios prove it. Subscribe now, because if this is how the title is being decided, Abu Dhabi is going to be absolute chaos. Oscar Piastri was flawless in Qatar. He took pole. He managed the opening laps with composure. He was executing every sector like a veteran in full control of a Grand Prix. But now, in the aftermath, the FIA has confirmed what millions of fans suspected watching live: McLaren, not Red Bull, cost him the victory. A single decision, made in the heat of the moment, unraveled a weekend that should have belonged to the Australian. On lap 7, the safety car came out after a collision between Gasly and Hülkenberg. It was a perfect moment to pit the textbook move. Everyone in the top 10 dove into the pits, looking to gain cheap track position while freezing tire wear. Everyone, except McLaren. They kept Piastri and Norris out. At the time, it looked bold. But now, thanks to FIA telemetry and radio analysis, it looks like the moment Piastri's race was lost. The FIA's post-race documentation now reveals internal strategy modeling McLaren had access to in real time. Those models showed a 70% probability of losing track position to Verstappen if they stayed out and a 90% chance of tire drop-off before lap 25. They saw those numbers. They ignored them. Red Bull saw the same data and reacted. That reaction was the difference between victory and second place. What makes this a scandal isn't just that the call was wrong. It's that the team had the right information and still chose the wrong path. And Piastri knew it. His radio, now public, reveals a moment of hesitation. Are we sure this is right? Silence. Then, stay out, Oscar. That was the message that cost him 23 seconds and the win. And it wasn't just strategy, it was a breakdown in execution at the highest level of motorsport. When Verstappen passed Piastri later in the race, there was no defense left. Max had the tire advantage, the track position, and the confidence of a team that made the right call under pressure. McLaren had the faster car, but they lost the race in the garage. Not in the corners. Not in the pit lane. In the decision-making structure that let analytics take a back seat to indecision. Now, with just one race remaining in the championship, the consequences are massive. Piastri is no longer in control of his destiny. He needs a miracle in Abu Dhabi. And what makes it worse is that Qatar wasn't a bad race. It was one of his best. But that won't show on the trophy shelf. What will show is that when it mattered most, his team chose the wrong option and left him exposed. Subscribe now, because if this is how McLaren handles pressure, then what happens in Abu Dhabi could be even more shocking. The title is still in play. But now, trust between driver and team is broken. And that changes everything. Heading into Qatar, McLaren had all the momentum. They had taken control of both the constructors' and drivers' standings, with Oscar Piastri emerging as a real threat in the final stretch of the season. Practice runs were clean. Qualifying was clinical. Piastri secured pole with a lap that silenced any remaining doubts about his ability to deliver under pressure. Red Bull looked cornered. Verstappen was off the front row. It was McLaren's weekend to lose, and they did. From the start, everything looked under control. Piastri got away clean, managing tire temperatures and delta times while Verstappen lingered in the rearview mirror. The MCL39 had superior traction in Sector 3, and Oscar was able to open minor gaps lap after lap. The team was calm. The radio was quiet. Even the commentators began to discuss how this win might swing the championship in Piastri's favor. Then came the safety car. Lap 7. Contact in the midfield brought out the yellow flags and reset the race. This was the moment teams prepare for all season, the chance to gain free track position. Red Bull reacted instantly, calling Verstappen in. Ferrari followed. So did Mercedes. McLaren? Silence. Both drivers stayed out. At first, it looked like a split strategy. But no. It was a unified call, one that broke every rule of modern F1 race management. The FIA's post-race document now confirms what happened next. The team ran simulations. They showed high degradation risks and the likelihood of losing out to rivals if they didn't box under safety car. But they stayed committed to the pre-race plan, assuming tire offsets and clean air would make up the difference. That decision ignored the single most important variable in any Grand Prix: track position. And once they lost it, they never got it back. As the race resumed, Piastri found himself leading in name only. Verstappen was now within striking distance with fresher tires and a car set up to run long. And every lap that passed without a pit stop from McLaren only deepened the mistake. When they finally boxed Piastri on lap 24, the undercut had already done its damage. He rejoined in second, behind a Red Bull that was never going to come back to him. The worst part? The MCL39 was still the fastest car on track. Piastri's pace remained strong through all stints. His tire wear rate was lower than Verstappen's. The data proved it. But none of it mattered. Because the advantage was lost not in a fight on the circuit but in a missed opportunity when the race was neutralized. McLaren, armed with the faster car and the stronger position, handed control of the race to their rival. This wasn't just a race McLaren failed to win. It was one they had already won until they unwon it from the pit wall. And now, with the FIA publishing exact model outputs and confirming that the team ignored clear red flags, the pressure shifts from driver to strategy unit. Because if they can lose Qatar like this, what's stopping them from throwing away the title in Abu Dhabi? When the FIA released the official lap time data after the Qatar Grand Prix, the numbers told a story the eye couldn't fully capture. Between laps 8 and 24, the critical window before Piastri finally boxed his pace was consistent, but subtly declining. Red Bull's Verstappen, on fresher tires after his safety car stop, began closing the gap at a rate of 4 to 6 tenths per lap. Not enough to panic but enough to shift control. McLaren saw this trend unfolding in real time, yet remained committed to their initial plan. Sector analysis confirmed that Piastri still had the better chassis through the high-speed sections, especially Sector 2, where his MCL39 carried more exit speed out of Turn 8 than any other car. But tire drop-off in the final third of his stint neutralized that advantage. He began to lose time on traction zones, particularly out of Turn 10 and Turn 14, both critical for defending track position. Verstappen, meanwhile, kept gaining efficiency as the stint progressed. The FIA's telemetry overlay showed something even more frustrating for McLaren. Piastri wasn't losing time because of mistakes or overdriving, he was simply running out of tire. His steering inputs remained clean. Throttle traces showed no erratic behavior. It was a controlled, composed drive. But with the safety car opportunity missed, the RB21's fresher rubber allowed Verstappen to erase a 9-second deficit before Piastri ever made it to the pit lane. Another critical insight came from tire degradation telemetry. The FIA reported that Piastri's left rear tire, the most stressed at Losail due to right-hand corners, lost 18% more performance than Verstappen's equivalent tire over the same lap range. That drop-off, combined with rising track temperatures after lap 15, meant that McLaren's window for recovery was closing lap by lap. By the time they responded, Verstappen's undercut was complete. The timing data was ruthless. Piastri's pit delta, the time lost from entering, stopping, and rejoining the track, was 22.9 seconds. When he boxed on lap 24, Verstappen was already inside that margin. The undercut didn't just succeed, it dominated. And while Piastri rejoined with slightly newer tires, the track position loss proved fatal. The RB21 may not have had the pure pace to defend in normal conditions, but with clean air and the pit advantage, Verstappen never had to look back. McLaren's strategy sheet included in the FIA's debrief showed that their original plan was to stretch the first stint past lap 25, using a 1-lap pace advantage per stint to overcome Red Bull's stop advantage. But that theory relied on Verstappen being trapped in traffic after his stop. He wasn't. The safety car created a clean restart window. Red Bull reacted. McLaren did not. The gap widened. And McLaren's fallback scenario collapsed in real time. In the end, the numbers don't lie. Oscar Piastri had the fastest car in Qatar. He had the cleanest qualifying lap. He was the most consistent in high-speed corners. But the team chose the wrong moment to trust their models over their instincts. The FIA's post-race data didn't accuse McLaren of sabotage, but it did confirm a strategic collapse of championship-level consequence. From the moment the MCL39 hit the track in Friday practice, it was clear McLaren had brought a car built for domination. The car's balance in medium to high-speed corners was outstanding, especially in Sector 2, the section that typically separates fast cars from championship contenders. Oscar Piastri consistently ran within 1/10 of Lando Norris in the same machinery, but what set him apart was his adaptability on long-run simulations. He didn't just match Norris, he outmanaged him on tire wear. Through the Friday long runs, McLaren engineers were tracking thermal degradation via infrared sensors, and Piastri's footprint was remarkable. His rear tires stayed below critical thresholds through all 14 lap runs, indicating a driver not only controlling pace, but mastering weight transfer and throttle load. Verstappen, by comparison, was struggling with a more nervous rear end. The RB21 required more correction and displayed signs of lateral instability, especially on corner exits like Turn 8. In qualifying, Piastri delivered a lap that stunned the paddock. It wasn't just raw speed, it was how early he rotated the car into corners and how little steering input he needed mid-apex. That confirmed two things. First, that the MCL39 had supreme mechanical grip, and second, that Piastri was fully in sync with the balance. His lap through the final sector was the cleanest of any driver all weekend, shaving time through fluid inputs and near-perfect traction off turn 15. McLaren's engineers designed the MCL39 with a rear suspension concept that favors rear-end stability at the expense of agility in low-speed corners. But in Qatar, where low-speed turns are minimal, this architecture paid dividends. Piastri could brake deeper into corners and release the brake with minimal rear slide, keeping the car stable through corner entry and optimizing exit speed. It allowed him to protect his tires while remaining aggressive, a rare balance that's usually hard to achieve. The team also benefited from superior DRS efficiency. GPS overlays from the FIA revealed that McLaren's top-end speed under DRS was 2 to 3 km/h higher than Red Bull's in identical zones. This was critical during qualifying, but also a safety net during the race in case Piastri needed to defend. The expectation was simple: if he got through turn 1 in the lead, the DRS zones would keep him safe. And he did. Until the safety car reshuffled everything. Radio data shows McLaren planned 2 pit stop windows, one before lap 10, and another between laps 22-26. Both scenarios assumed a green flag race. But the lap 7 incident changed the risk model entirely. In theory, the MCL39 could still run the longer strategy, but the benefit of track position, in a race where clean air was king, made the safety car stop the obvious move. That the team didn't adapt suggests either tunnel vision or a hierarchy that blocked the call. This is where the technical brilliance of the MCL39 actually worked against McLaren. Because Piastri was able to maintain pace longer, he wasn't demanding a stop over the radio. The car's balance masked the gradual loss in delta time. So while the numbers told one story, the driver's performance told another. It gave McLaren a false sense of security, one they wouldn't realize until Verstappen was already ahead, and the race was already over.